in part because of actions out of Washington, D.C. Because we are committed to ensuring that we have a food bank for the long haul for this community, we've had to make some very difficult decisions over the last couple of weeks that impact our operations and will impact services to those people that are standing out in line today. And so to walk you through all of that, I'm going to turn this over to Susan Goodell, who's the CEO of El Pasoans Fighting Hunger, and she can talk about some of the changes that we're going to begin implementing in the next couple of weeks. Susan?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. I am heartbroken to stand here in front of you today to announce El Pasoans Fighting Hunger's difficult decision to reduce service despite extremely high need in this community. Over the last 7 years, this has been an extremely high-performing food bank. In fact, we have consistently ranked amongst the top 10 for the last 5 years running. This food bank has served as the backbone of DNET in this community. And in many ways, we've been an underdog organization, overcoming the odds time after time on the front lines of some of the hardest situations this community has ever faced, including, as Bob said, the migrant crisis, the mass shooting, the last government shutdown, and of course, COVID. Unfortunately, today we're facing the perfect storm. The reality is both our food supply and our funding has become unstable. El Paso is a poor community with little food production. This makes us especially vulnerable to these changes. Our funding over recent months has dropped by 30%, 2024 as compared to 2023. As we distance from COVID, it seems that funding for nonprofits on those front lines is dropping much faster than the need in the community. At the same time, an organization like us that's 36% dependent on government funding for our operating expenses now faces incredibly unstable government funding circumstances. Food in this community is difficult to find. We are a desert community with only 5% of the food that we distribute here at El Pasoans Fighting Hunger coming from our own footprint. Government food is another 20% of our food supply, leaving the remaining food supply of 75% being donated from all over the country. However, this requires the funding to pay for the transportation to bring that nutritious food into El Paso for our most vulnerable neighbors. This organization has already become more and more lean over recent years. In fact, we're considered the most efficient food bank in the country. Combined, these challenges are forcing operational changes. We must reduce operational costs to align with our available resources while maximizing impact and diminishing the hard realities for our clients. What this entails is 20% of our agency partners are slated to no longer receive food from this food bank. 20% of our mobile pantries, including mobile pantries at some of our poorest schools, are slated to no longer receive food. And finally, this food bank will only be in operation 4 days a week. Tuesday through Friday, with skeletal crews on Monday and Saturday. Simply put, El Pasoans Fighting Hunger remains committed to feeding our neighbors in need, but we're in a difficult position. The reality is, with fewer resources, we must make tough decisions to protect core operations, even as we navigate this funding crisis. With extremely limited local food supply, we must be laser-focused on bringing the most nutritious food into El Paso for our neighbors in need. Despite this heartbreaking situation, I know that there will be better days to come. and El Pasoans Fighting Hunger stands ready to spring back when that day comes. Thank you.
That concludes it for us, guys. If you guys would like one-on-one interviews, please come to the left side of the podium.
By any chance, is there...
I don't have any more.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
Oops, sorry.
Can you describe the library?
Yep.
You guys want to see it all at once? See it? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not like that, so. If you need to, you can step right here, but then I know you're recording your phone, so that we can get that out here.
Here in the middle. Testing.
Yep. Good? All right. Rolling?
I'm rolling.
All right. Just for the record, can you state your first and last name and your title, please?
My name is Susan Goodell, and I'm CEO of El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank.
You know, regarding the information you just shared with us about the changes happening to the El Paso, to the food bank, I wanted to ask you, can you, how do these cuts compare to distribution and staffing levels pre-COVID?
So this food bank has been on a rapid growth trajectory over the last 7 years. I can tell you the year before I came, after these cuts, will be about 8 times the size of that organization, of this organization at that time. However, what we're looking at is a 28% reduction in the food supply for El Paso.
Can you tell us how much, let's say, people use these services per day? All the impact that you have in this community, how many people you serve?
El Pasoans Fighting Hunger feeds 1 in 5 people in this community. That means between 180 and 190,000 people depend on this food bank to put nutritious food on their tables. That means for some people, they may only need to come when they're in crisis, and for folks like our seniors, they are often here every week. This is an incredibly difficult decision to make, and one that I am absolutely heartbroken over.
Walking up here this afternoon, the line stretches pretty much to the street. I've been told that it stretches sometimes up to the freeway. With your operations changing to 4 days a week, do you expect that demand to be sort of distributed to those 4 days? And how do you expect to manage that demand?
We selected the 4 most busily used days for this food bank. So Monday tends to be a lighter day for our clients to visit here at El Pasoans Fighting Hunger. So we are focusing our services on Tuesday through Friday in order to actually provide those services on those days when there are most people here.
If the food bank is cutting services, what happens to the staff for those services? Will they be moved to other areas?
So our staff is going to be working for the most part 4 10-hour days. Our distribution to the public will cease on Mondays, but we will be here for our regular services Tuesday through Friday, and we'll also have a skeletal staff here on Mondays and on Saturdays. On Mondays, predominantly to receive food as we are able to get it from other parts of the country. We'll need people here to unload those trucks and make sure that the food is secured. And on Saturdays, which is our largest volunteer day, we will certainly be open to welcome volunteers.
How can the community support the organization? Maybe donations, volunteering? How can they do this?
The reality is that 75% of our food is donated from various parts of the country that are food producing. So Frankly, we just need their support. We need this community to step up and help the food bank. Every dollar that we receive is very quickly translated into 7 meals on someone's table.
How will the food pantries and your where you distribute food to, how will that impact those small buildings across the community?
We used a couple different criteria to choose the agencies that we were going to discontinue service to. Effectively, we are looking at both our smallest agency partners and at those agencies that are closely located to other larger partners. So we want to maintain as strong a presence in individual neighborhoods as we possibly can. So in those neighborhoods that have multiple agencies serving, we are selecting the strongest agencies in those neighborhoods.
I know you had mentioned that there was schools that were going to be cut out as well. Have you guys had any conversations with, that district or parents?
Notifications were sent out this morning to all of the agency partners, including some of our school partners, letting them know whether or not they are affected by these cuts.
I know this food bank has had struggles before and you've overcome them, but can you be a little bit more specific on what maybe this government, what actions has this government and how are they impacting the food bank? Many a fund that you guys depended that maybe is being cut. What is the situation?
Regarding government funding, what we're looking at is about 36% of our general operating budget, which is what keeps us operating on a day-to-day basis, coming from the government. That funding has become incredibly unstable and unpredictable. We are seeing situations where one day funding looks like it will continue and the very next day we're being told that that funding is being cut. And it is frankly, it is a bit of a roller coaster right now, and in uncertain times like this, we have to protect core operations. We've got to make sure that every resource that we have is going to make sure that people who are low income in this community get the food that they need. So we are refocusing on our core operations to make sure that we can keep food supplies as high as possible and that we maintain not only the volume but the nutrition necessary to keep people healthy and strong, and the mix of product so that people have a variety of nutritious foods from meat, dairy, fruit, vegetables, and baked goods.
On that note, is there something specific that you are asking for, donation-wise?
For people in this community who are in a position to help, we are asking that people please consider making a financial donation. Every dollar that we raise is that dollar that we can bring nutritious food into this community and convert that dollar very quickly into 7 meals for someone in need.
I'm not sure if this has already been asked, but portion-wise, will this impact how much is given to each individual that comes to the address or to this? Will this affect, I guess, the amount of portion that's portioned to families or anybody that in need?
With the reduction in the food supply that we are predicting, we will have to ration the amount of food that any individual or family is able to receive, either from the food bank directly or through our agency partners. It is a sad reality of the situation we find ourselves in.
So are these cuts due to the changes at the federal level with the Trump administration and the DOGE cuts?
These cuts are largely government cuts that are coming at us from a number of directions. I'm hesitant to identify any particular individual or entity, but I think most people have been following the uncertainty that all of us are facing, and I think that this is unlikely to be a surprise to too many people who've been following the news.
And what does this mean for food banks? I know you said that this is one of the most efficient food banks in the country. What does this mean for food banks in other parts of the country?
El Paso is really the canary in the coal mine. This is a desert community with very little food production, and it's frankly a poor community. So very little funding comes from this community to support the food bank. Most of our funding is coming from other parts of the country. So for us, given the circumstances of our geography and the nature of our community, we are in all likelihood the first to be affected, but I can tell you these conversations are happening at food banks across the country, and we are all facing incredibly uncertain times. And I think that, sadly, this will not be the only news coming from food banks in the future.
How will you be notifying those who come to get help with their food insecurity?
So we are providing notifications to our clients. We have notifications going out to our agency partners as well as notifications here at the food bank, both through our verbal talking with our clients, but also we have an intercom system that we regularly share messaging with our clients, and this will be one of those messages that we will share.
And when will 4-day operations begin? Is it next week?
The first Monday that we will be closed will be March 28th.
I have one final question.
March 31st. March 31st is the first Friday.
Oh, I'm sorry, March 31st, yes. Want me to say that again?
Yes.
The last Monday that, or the first Monday that we will be closed will be March 31st.
And I just have a final question. In terms of, I know you said you didn't want to identify, you were hesitant to, but what is your message to leaders who took this decision that is not going to affect the Pasoans here? Do you have a message for them?
I think when times are hard, people who struggle need to have that social safety net. They need to be able to depend on food banks and other organizations that provide for basic human needs, things like food and shelter and just the basics. I hope that as leaders look at the impact of recent actions, we'll look at this and perhaps reconsider. Our people have to have organizations that are strong, that they can fall back on in times of trouble.
I have a question. I understand, you're a leader of this food bank and you go out and come to work and you help people every day with their food insecurity. How does this impact you and members of the board on a personal level, knowing that these changes are going to be impacting this community?
I think there's only one word to describe what we're experiencing here at the food bank, whether it's at the staff level or the board level, and that is we are just simply heartbroken. We see the people who come here regularly and depend on this food bank, and we know what it means to them. We look them in their eyes, we hear their stories, and you can't do that without feeling it.
Thank you so much.
So,
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not part of TV. I just wanted to know. I wanted to know, aside from government funding, some of the money that the food bank is comes from corporations, foundations, individual donors. Have you seen any significant declines also in those areas? If so, why?
We have been seeing significant declines in private funding as well as government funding. I think that part of that is because everyone is struggling right now, regardless if you're nonprofit or for-profit. These are incredibly uncertain times. And when times are this uncertain, people tend to pause and see if they can support themselves and their own families before they know whether they're in a position to help others.
And prior to the Trump administration, were you also seeing declines in government funding?
We have seen relatively stable funding from government sources for many, many years. What we've experienced over the last couple months is unprecedented.
And do you have a final message to the community?
I think it's no secret that this food bank cares very deeply for this community. I could not be more proud of the team, both on the staff and on the board. Please know that we will do everything in our power to overcome these challenges and make sure that we get the food that this community so desperately needs.
Has rising food costs at all also affected the purchasing power of the food bank?
Our food bank typically does not purchase food. We are one of the poorest food banks, frankly, in the country. And so we rely very heavily on donated food. And there is beautiful donated food that is surplus across the nation, particularly in food-producing parts of the country, whether it's fresh fruits and vegetables or lean meats or dairy. But we need the resources to go and pick it up, either with our own tractor trailers or to hire common carriers, tractor trailer companies, to bring it to us.
So it's not that there's fewer food available from outside sources, it's that the resources to get that food here.
That's correct. What many people don't realize is that 40% of the food produced in this country is destroyed. And so food banks like ours depend on the generosity of food companies that actually are making the decision whether to donate that food or whether to destroy that food. So our job is to make that as easy for those companies as possible to donate the food. But what that means is we have to be there very quickly in order to rescue that food and bring it into El Paso for our people.
And a big part of the food bank's operations is also signing people up for SNAP, as well as checking on the status of their applications. In the past couple of months, how have you seen that area affected?
We are watching what is happening with SNAP very, very carefully. This is an incredibly important program for our lowest income community members. So SNAP has been around for decades, and it allows people who've lost their jobs or have fallen on hard times to be able to afford food, even though they're working hard to spring back from whatever challenge that they have personally faced. The challenges that we're seeing with SNAP are many. I think that it is one of those programs that's being considered for cuts. I am hoping with every ounce of my being that that does not happen. That is a critical part of the social safety net, and we're watching it very, very carefully.
And just to, and on a final positive note, any achievements that you're proud of through all the years that this food bank has operated? How many families feed, or how many tons of food have you collected?
I am incredibly proud of this food bank. This food bank has worked so hard to find new sources of food, to bring fresh food, which historically has never been available through the food bank, and to make sure that we're as accessible as possible for people who often have limited transportation or have needs beyond basic food. This food bank has expanded our services to assist in so many different ways, and I am just heartbroken that we're going to have to scale back in the coming days and weeks and likely months.
Do you know what schools already are going to be affected?
I do, but I do not have that list with me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You all right?
Yeah.